Hello, heroes and Zargons. I'm Alfrich, and this is the Trials and Tribulations of Zargon, a series which details the many ways in which the Emperor's heroes foil Zargon and his minions in their plots to conquer the Empire. After the heroes humiliated Zargon in the original quest, it was time for a little something different, so I presented my heroes with a menu of threats facing the Empire, and they elected to go to the area of the Storm Lord. This is the second in a three-part series about this dungeon where I talk about its structure. The quest begins with the following read-aloud text. High atop the loftiest peaks and dark mountains lies the Eyrie of Borush, the Storm Master. You have tracked this dabbler in the magics of chaos to his lair, scaling sheer heights of the mountains to get to this Eyrie. However, another seemingly insurmountable challenge awaits you. How to get in. No door appears in the rough-hewn base. You think perhaps there is an entrance on the top, but the wind is whipping up above. Mentor Scrying has shown him that Borush's experiments with separating and refining the four elements is causing instability. There are 4 nodes that focus and separate this energy, 1 per element, scattered throughout the area. You should, however, be able to shut them down with the tools in your toolkit. You find a sally port at the base of the area and begin carefully making your way into the dungeon. But as the second of your party members crosses the threshold, the earth shakes and boulders slam down, sealing them in and blocking the gate. The remaining 3 party members will have to scale the wall and seek entry from atop the tower. The quest begins with the party split across the first and third floors and constantly being bombarded by environmental effects. The goal of these 2 elements is to give the heroes a strategic choice. Do they want to stay split up and try to find and disarm the source of those environmental effects quickly? Or do they want to suffer those effects for longer while they try to meet up and then shut off the elemental nodes as one strong party? To make that choice live, I had to ensure that A, the rooms containing the environmental nodes were close to where the heroes entered, B, that they would be difficult but not impossible to defeat with a small party, and C, that the paths between floors weren't too far from the starting locations either. The middle board of this 3-board quest is a very slightly modified version of Quest 3 from the Wizards of Morcar quest pack, and has a lot of monsters. So the stairs to and from floors A and B needed to be near each other. Looking at board B, the original Morcar board, there were several rooms in the northern corridor that effectively had nothing in them. Fire traps that were extremely unlikely to hit anything, and the original stairs from the board. So I made that the rendezvous point. I also knew that the boards couldn't be particularly large because exploration time, while not quite exponential, is not linear either. I decided to use the footprint from floor B as the base width of the tower. So floor A, which is the base of the tower, had to support floor B, and then floor C could be much smaller, as though the tower narrowed at the top. Since I knew my theme was elemental magic and I had my floor connections, I knew that the next component I needed was 4 relatively equal and unique subsections of the dungeon themed around the elements in the game. I knew I wanted the central board to preserve the original Wizards of Morcar board, so I had 2 options. I could put 3 elemental subsections on the larger floor, floor A, since it had the largest footprint, or I could split them evenly across floor A and floor C. I was splitting the party, and that meant I decided to split the targets evenly. That was an easy decision. At this point, the design became a series of interconnected mini-dungeons. I first decided on elemental effects that would be global, then decided on the placement for the nodes. Since I knew I was using environmental effects as time pressure, I wanted some but not all to deal damage, and I wanted a few of them to have some kind of potential to be a reprieve. The elemental ideas came easily enough. Fire deals direct damage most frequently in the game, so it dealt damage in the form of a lightning bolt. Earthquakes should deal damage to everyone, so they would deal damage to both heroes and monsters. Wind could blow people around, and since wind was affecting movement, water should affect damage, in this case slowing the speed of weapons through the air and causing them to do less damage. After I knew that 2 effects dealt damage, it was clear that I needed 1 on floor A and 1 on floor C. Beyond that, the placement was effectively random. I designed floor A first, so the first ideas I had went on that floor, and the second ideas went on floor C. I mention this because when we played the quest, Matt thought I had been intentional in putting what he saw as the 2 most dangerous rooms on the top floor, where he would have 3 heroes to deal with them. Lucky happenstance. To return to the dungeon, The heroes on the ground floor begin in the eastern corridor, where they can either go north or west. To the north is a dangerous room filled with weapon racks and elf warriors. If the heroes conquer it, they can, however, optimize their equipment, for they find one of every weapon in the game. This room is intended to provide the party with some cash money and some carrying capacity optimization problems that will be exacerbated by other loot in the dungeon. So its design relies on a house rule that we are using about carrying capacity. If they survive, the heroes can risk a falling rock trap or disarm it and continue north to find the hallway with the stairs. The entire northeast quadrant is a bit of a reprieve from fighting, since in addition to the stair room, it contains a room intended to represent the kitchen and a hospital room where heroes can get patched up by a strange character who seems to take for granted that people with grievous wounds caused by elemental forces being experimented on in this dungeon will just wander in. The rooms in the quadrant were designed late in the quest and were needed chiefly to make the footprint of the dungeon make sense. The hospital wing in particular I added to balance the ravages that random environmental effects on every turn could inflict on a party. If the heroes go west from the entrance instead of north, they pass a small alchemist quarters containing potions. These potions can be drunk to cast a random elemental spell or simply thrown for damage. Again, designed late in the dungeon, this room just makes sure that the heroes have a little extra firepower if they stumble into something dangerous. I believe Matt just drank all 4 of the potions immediately, hoping to hit some healing, and did. The eastern portions of this floor are where the meat of the action is. To the south is the node causing water elemental instability in the Eyrie. In this chamber, the water elemental effect is always in play, so both heroes and monsters roll 1 less die to attack and defend. In each elemental chamber, there is a warlock with the spells matching the element and 1 Stormmaster spell. In the water node room, heroes who enter will find themselves trapped as the room fills with water, creating time pressure. Again, I like time pressure. Can you tell? They have 3 turns to defuse the water node, or they'll lose the loot in this room, and 6 before they drown. This creates a lot of pressure to maybe not fight the monsters in the room initially, and instead hunt for and disarm the orb. Obviously, with the spellcasting warlock around, that's a dangerous choice, however. Heroes who succeed in time receive a potion of healing, a potion of dexterity, and a heroic brew. Heroes who take too long merely escape with their lives. To the north, the Earth Room was inspired by the Chaos Warriors from Quest 7, who have stone skin. In the end, however, I settled on stone monsters that, surprise, come to life as the heroes pass them. If the heroes disarm the Earth node, they shut off the earthquake effect, and when they can search at their leisure, they find a spellbook that can replenish a caster's Earth spells. It can also be used as a spell scroll at the cost of carrying no other single-use items. You'll notice a theme at this point of replenishing elemental magic effects. This is intentional. A wizard usually has access to 27 spells for 3 boards, so I needed a way to give the party a little more magical firepower in this dungeon. But I didn't want to just give them a book where they could rememorize their spells. One last mini section of this floor is a secret chamber adjacent to the stone node chambers. Once I decided that Boresh was experimenting with elements on people, I needed a place to keep the rejects. So I inserted a single long room as a sort of dungeon by inserting already opened doors to connect all of the westernmost rooms running north to south. Then, I inserted specially themed monsters that had effects tied to each of the elements. This experiment's gone wrong chamber needed both a reward and a warning because it was a very dangerous room to enter with just 2 heroes. I closed the entrance with a portcullis and required a strength check, 2d6 roll under your maximum body points to force the door. For a reward, I was looking for something themed, and we had never actually discussed whether the heroes could look at monster statistics. I was pretty sure that Matt had most of them memorized, but sometimes he looked and sometimes he just tried to remember. So I gave the heroes a book recording the statistics of every non-custom monster in the game, and every monster in this particular dungeon. That way, there's no confusion. If Matt wants to look up a monster stat, he just does it. The central chamber of this dungeon is a final treasure room, containing the supplies for the Eyrie and 2 positive draws from the treasure deck. While the heroes on floor A are exploring, those on floor C enter immediately into a pitched battle with some elven warriors. Once they clear them, they can either go north or south. South leads them to a chamber containing the node of wind, northwest leads them to a chamber containing the node of fire and the stairs, and northeast leads them to a guard chamber where the guards are doing a drug called moonsnow. The air chamber I positioned where it is because the gale force winds allow me to blow heroes down into a floor below, near another pit that would drop them all the way to the bottom floor. It provides an alternate path through which the heroes meet up. It is also a very dangerous room because the projectiles of the monsters in this room are aided by the air there, and the heroes' projectiles are hindered. Should the heroes triumph, their reward presents a conundrum. They can take a table from the room, which is carved with Borish's notes on his experiments with air. If they do, 2 heroes will have to take it. They can decide this at the end of the quest. But they must somehow shift all of their loot, expendable magic items, and items in backpacks to other heroes or leave some of it behind. This reward was intended to give the heroes some choices about what to take home and gave the wizard 3 extra spells, Blinding Sleet, Hurricane, and Thieving Wind from the Stormmaster deck. Up north, the Fire node keeps the HeroQuest theme of fire being about direct damage, with heroes potentially taking damage from the heat in the room every turn, and the fire monsters dealing additional damage with their attacks. This node occurs directly above the rooms that contain magical fire traps in the original Wizards of Morcar quest pack, which gives a reason for those inexplicably empty rooms to contain fire traps. Clearly, the elemental magic from the room above is spilling down into the rooms below. Conquering the monsters in the fire room provides the heroes with an ever-warm stone, which functions as 4 potions of warmth. It is intended to be useful in the Frozen Horror quest pack, which we were going to play shortly after this quest, but Matt's heroes needed the healing immediately. The final room on this floor, the guard room, previews some of the mechanics of magic in my campaign and some of the directions I'll be taking Matt's heroes. Moonsnow is a component of the potions of the world and is derived from Moonstone, the source of magic. All of this, you'll know, is ripped directly from Games Workshop lore, though filtered through Professor Dungeon Master's retelling of the Caves of Chaos campaign. The heroes could take hits of Moonsnow for benefits, and each time they did, I asked Matt to track who had taken what. I have some ideas about long-term effects of such abuses, but I've neither worked them out exactly nor revealed them to Matt, so that information will have to appear in a future video. Whether the heroes clear these floors first or meet up, the 3rd floor contains the original Eyrie of the Storm Lord with slight modifications. First, I added a staircase in the northeast quadrant so that the heroes could climb up easily from below. Then I removed a few empty corridors, since a 3-board quest takes long enough without a bunch of dead ends. Finally, I added a small chamber in the southwest quadrant where the mechanism opening the sally port is located to give a little more coherence to the narrative I share in the mentor's texts. Heroes will explore this dungeon from the northern corridor south, and in that corridor they will encounter a hurricane trap, one of several new traps in the Wizards of Morcar questbook. If they avoid it and take the southeast pathway, they essentially run into a dead end. But the Sallyport mechanism gives at least a reason for this pathway, and a pit trap takes them into the hospital wing, making an alternative route to other portions of the dungeon. The northwest quadrant contains another dead-end path, this one filled with fire traps and nothing else. Hopefully an explanation for these traps is now gestured at by the elemental experimentation in the chamber above. A secret door in this quadrant leads the heroes down a winding path through lots of orcs, a few chaos warriors, and a few undead to Borish's chambers. The path is linear, though it does take the heroes through 6 rooms. It also takes them past a teleportation trap that, when activated, moves the hero into the room farthest from Borish's chambers, forcing them to make their way painstakingly back through the entire dungeon. Borish himself occupies the central chamber with his most trusty servants, armed with the Stormmaster spells and spoiling for a fight. So, that's the dungeon. I hope this overview gives some insight into the design process and spatial logic of the tower. The 3 boards together took us about 6 hours to play and gave a wildly fun evening. I'll let Matt tell the trials and tribulations of his heroes, the highlights of the dungeon for him, and what the logic of the dungeon was like from his perspective. I hope I'm not the only Zargon out here designing sprawling mega dungeons. After all, the only way to expand HeroQuest is with more HeroQuest. If you're building like I am, let's plot together in the comments below.